These are the 5 defenses with the most upside. Number 1 on the list is the New York Jets. The Jets finished the year as the number 4 scoring defense in all of fantasy last year. This is actually very impressive if you think about how little help they got from their offense. The Jets offense averaged 15.8 points per game last year, good for 29th. And if Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy and buy them a little bit more time, they should flourish. The Jets were 25th in terms of time of possession last year, so they were just gassed at the end of games. And I think with Breece Hall now being healthy and handling a full workload, they should be able to control the game a lot better. Even in a tough situation, they performed pretty well. They allowed the 12th fewest points per game. They had the 3rd most interceptions in the league, returning 2 for a touchdown. They had the 7th most sacks and the 6th most forced fumbles. They also have all-pro talent at every level. They have Quinnen Williams up front. They have CJ Mosley. They have Sauce Gardner, obviously. They also have DJ Reed, who's very talented. And they also have an emerging Quincy Williams, who got his first all-pro bid last year. And if they can figure out the situation with Hassan Reddick, they would be even more potent. I also love the division they play in. They're going to see Drake May twice a year, who's bound to make some mistakes as a rookie. They also get to play Josh Allen, who's obviously another world talent, but he does pretty much lead the league in interceptions every year. And then they get Tua, who was tied for the 4th most interceptions last year. As an added bonus, they returned 1 punt for a touchdown last year, so if you're looking to take a chance on a defense with a lot of upside, I think the Jets are the team to take. Number 2 on the list is the Houston Texans. The Texans finished the year as the 14th highest scoring defense in fantasy last year, but from weeks 13 through 18, they were number 4, and they actually allowed the 11th fewest points per game. And this defense should be much better this year. They have a lot of young, emerging stars. Will Anderson Jr. was Rookie of the Year last year. They also have Derek Stingley. They have Christian Harris. And they also had a great free agency. They brought in Danielle Hunter on a 2-year deal. And they also signed Azeez Al-Shaair. Even last year, being young, they were solid. They had the 9th most sacks, they had the 6th most interceptions, and the 5th most forced fumbles, returning 1 for a touchdown. It also helps that they have a great offense, and they should be better in terms of controlling the clock this year. Last year, they were 29th in terms of time of possession, but they brought in Joe Mixon, who should definitely help alleviate that area. They also play in a pretty favorable division. They play Trevor Lawrence twice a year, who was tied for the 4th most interceptions. They also play Anthony Richardson, who was essentially a rookie because he missed most of last year. And they have to play Will Levis. The Texans also had 2 kick returns for a touchdown last year. Now, I know the rules are a bit different around the kick returns this year, but I have to think their special teams are going to be strong once again. I really like that DeMeco Ryans is the head coach of this team. He's a defensive guy, and I think with 1 more year underneath his belt, he should get this defense right into the top tier. Number 3 on the list is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens finished as the number 2 scoring defense in all of fantasy last year. They allowed the fewest points per game, just a little bit over 16. They led the league in sacks with 60, and they were tied for the 2nd most interceptions with 18, and they took 1 back to the house. They also had the 5th most forced fumbles, and they had 1 punt return taken back for a touchdown. One thing you can bank on about this team is that this offense is going to control the clock. Since Lamar Jackson's been in the league, they have pretty much been in the top 5 every year in terms of time of possession. And I think that'll definitely be the case again this year, especially with them adding Derrick Henry. The only reason they're not higher on this list is the fact that they're going through a lot of change. Mike McDonald is no longer the defensive coordinator. He's now the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. They lost Patrick Queen, who went to the rival Steelers, and they also lost Jadeveon Clowney. Ultimately, I do still think they're going to be a top 3 defense. I have a lot of faith in their new DC, former Raven Zach Orr, and they still have Roquan Smith, who's a perennial All-Pro. They have Marlon Humphrey, and they have an emerging Justin Madubuike. They also drafted Nate Wiggins in the 1st round, so these DBs should be some of the best in the league. Number 4 on the list is the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers finished as the 10th highest scoring defense in all of fantasy last year, and they truly have all pros at every level. You got Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Mooney Ward, and Talanoa Hufanga. And they also have stars in Dre Greenlaw, Jair Brown, and newly drafted Malik Mustafa. I think this team is going to look much better than they did last year and should be closer to where they were in 2022 when they finished as the 3rd highest scoring defense in fantasy. I also think with Javon Hargrave having another year in this system, he should get back to looking like the Hargrave we saw in Philadelphia. The 49ers were still solid last year. They allowed the 4th fewest points per game, allowing just under 19 per contest, and they had the 7th most sacks. With Steve Wilkes no longer the defensive coordinator, I think they'll get back to operating how they did before, trying to win up front. Nick Sorensen is now the DC. He was an internal hire and is a former player who was a safety. And I think him knowing how the Niners scheme works will help these players benefit greatly. The only reason they're not higher on this list is largely due to depth and injuries. First, Talanoa Hufanga, like I mentioned, is coming back from a torn ACL, so he'll likely be brought back slowly. Dre Greenlaw is also coming back from a torn Achilles, so he'll also be likely brought back slowly. And also Drake Jackson is lost for the year. The other piece is depth. They don't have as much depth up front as I would like. They did bring in Leonard Floyd, who's still very talented, but he is aging, and he did just recently suffer a knee sprain, so it'll be interesting to see how they figure that out. I do think once this defense hits their stride and all the players get up to speed, they'll be much better. I could see them having a better second half of the year than the first. If you're looking for a defense to invest in that will probably get more points as the season goes on, they're definitely one to target. Number 5 on the list is the Cleveland Browns. The Browns finished as the 5th highest scoring defense in fantasy last year, and they were kind of a surprise. And I think with Jim Schwartz having another year underneath his belt, he should get this defense to operate at an even higher level. They brought back pretty much everyone, including Shelby Harris, and so this front line should be intact. Last year, they had the 6th most sacks, the 6th most forced fumbles, taking one back for a touchdown, and the 2nd most interceptions. They also allowed the fewest yards per game and the 13th fewest points per game. They also have an immense amount of talent. Obviously, they have Myles Garrett. They also have Denzel Ward. They have Shelby Harris, who I mentioned. And they also have Zadarius Smith. The Browns were also number 1 in terms of time of possession last year, and they were actually 2nd in 2022. And if Nick Chubb can get up to speed quickly, I don't see why they won't finish in the top 3 again. That is a huge boost for the defense since they won't be on the field as much. Lastly, I want to make a quick honorable mention about the Dallas Cowboys. I know the Cowboys finished as the top scoring defense in all of fantasy last year, and they've actually been number 1 2 out of the last 3 years. The one year they weren't, they were number 2. I'm just a bit nervous about them because there's so much change around them. For one, Dan Quinn is no longer on the team. He's now the head coach of the Washington Commanders. And while I do think Mike Zimmer's talented, he's not the coach that Dan Quinn is. This linebacking core is also looking a bit suspect, and Trayvon Diggs is coming back from a serious knee injury. They also lost Stephon Gilmore, and they really haven't fixed their running back room. They brought back Zeke Elliott, and they have Rico Dowdle, so I could see time of possession being an issue for this team. Lastly, this team has become very reliant on scoring on turnovers. They had 5 interceptions returned for touchdowns last year, and I just feel like that is not sustainable. Those are the 5 defenses with the most upside. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and let me know which defenses you think we should target in the comments below.